Cheers, Sarah. Salud.
Salut, santé. How are you doing over there in Montreal?
Doing good. I got my little teacup here.
Oh.
Yeah, I like this one because it's from my sister-in-law's wedding.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. Her and her husband thrifted a bunch of mugs leading up to the wedding, and then for their party favor, they let each guest choose which one spoke to them. So
what a great idea.
This one spoke to me because it's a cute little mug. It's got a little chip there if you see it, sadly, but that was after the wedding, not before.
It's like Chip in the Beauty and the Beast.
Yes,
like
exactly.
It's just cute.
Yeah.
And unassuming and adorable.
Yeah.
So I went the other direction. You went small teacup. I went big coffee mug. So I have a souvenir coffee mug that I put pictures on afterwards. Like I just got it made. Pictures from our trip that we went when we went to Halifax, Nova Scotia. It was back in 2019. It was one of our favorite trips. So much so that this year we went back there to Nova Scotia, but this time to Cape Breton. Who just love the ocean, the mountains, the wildlife, the people, but maybe even best, the food is so good. If you love seafood, it is like the heaven of seafood. So you got lobster and shrimp and crab and cod, and it was just really great fish and chips. Really great seafood chowder. Oh my word. But I know that you're from Massachusetts originally, so you know all that world of the seafood chowder. Are you like a seafood person?
I do like some seafood. There are some things that I'm like, I'm not sure. Like if I see faces on seafood, I'm like, no, thank you. No. I'm good.
No, anything chewy, octopusy.
Actually, I like calamari, but there are some things like we would do steamed clams, and if I have sand in there when I'm eating it, it's not very appetizing in my opinion. So I've had to kind of work around that a little bit.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Okay, so yeah, it's a Massachusetts girl, but you do have limits on your seafood.
Yes, I have limits.
Oh, very
cool. It sounds like it's a great place for our English learners to travel to experience a new location where English is spoken.
And there's French communities too. There's Acadian communities, and there's also some First Nations communities as well. So there's the English part that was started by the Scottish, of course, Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. Then you have the Acadians who speak French, and then the native populations that speak their native languages still there.
Cool. So lots of cultures, lots of languages. That's why I love it. It's so great. All right. So before we get started, don't forget to listen to these expressions as we go along. We've got get the best of both worlds, the other side of the coin, and boiled down to the essentials. So don't forget to write down what you think they mean, and we'll have a crosswords at the end of the season so you can double check.
Yeah, so get your notebooks handy. Listen again. Remember, they're the best of both worlds. You can write it down. The other side of the coin, and boil down to the essentials. These are very common English expressions that will help you sound really natural when you speak. So get your notebooks handy, and your 20 minutes start now. In the last 2 episodes, we looked at why it's important to add 20 minutes a day of learning your second language into your daily, everyday life. It might not even be your second language. Maybe it's your third, fourth, fifth. You're like Erin, you're like 10th. So it's all about being consistent, right? Doing small blocks consistently over time. It really helps the brain assimilate the new language, the new vocabulary, the pronunciation, the comprehension, and it moves whatever you're learning from the short-term memory to your long-term memory, so it becomes more natural.
Yes. And we also talked about how it's important to do things that you like doing, right? And to integrate it into your daily routines. So while you're washing dishes, getting to work, getting ready for bed, brushing your teeth, exercising, whatever you're doing, it's not about adding one more thing to your busy schedule. It's just integrating it into the plan that you already have.
Right. We already have busy lives. We all do. So like if you're in your car anyway, why not use that time to improve a skill that you've been wanting to improve? And we also gave some tips and tricks for all 4 communication skills: the speaking, the listening, reading, and writing. And that was last time.
Yep. And this time we're going to follow that same pattern, but instead we're going to share resources for each of those sections. So yes, we're going to be throwing a lot of information at you today, but don't worry because we're going to add all of these resources into the links below. So most of these resources too are either completely free or they have a great free version, or they're just very accessible, low budget.
Yeah, or their free version is, even if they do have a paywall, like their free version has enough features to make it worthwhile.
Exactly. Yep.
And all of this, again, is about reaching your objectives. What are your goals? Because that's what will keep us motivated. Like thinking about your why. Why are you improving your language skills? Is it because you want to go on vacation down south and you want to be able to ask what time it is and understand? Is it because you have the goal of moving to another country or another part of the country? Or is it out of relationships, a love relationship or a hate relationship? Like, or maybe you want a promotion at your job. Like, just stop and think for a second. Why? Why do you want to improve your next language that you want to learn?
Yeah, because keeping these whys in our mind will help us stay on track. And it's super important to make sure that your goals and your language practice is sustainable so that you can continue it for the long run, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get started with the speaking side of things, since that's the skill that most people want to perfect out of the 4.
Yeah, and when speaking, I suggest anyway that you want to interact with a real, live, human native speaker. AI just can't cut it.
Yeah, at least not yet. We'll see what happens down in the future. I know there's some different apps where you can talk to AI to practice language learning, but I personally haven't tried it myself. So we'll see. For now, though, you need a human.
Yeah, and that's what we do at Verbatim. Like, we have language coaches that help you improve your language skills. Yes, we can do writing and reading, but a lot of it is speaking and listening comprehension. Because we do more than what AI is able to do, is that share our passion for language learning. Like, I hope that comes across, but like all of our coaches are just passionate about sharing our love of languages and just our love of our mother tongue, and we want to be able to share that with others.
Yeah, I love talking to our French coach, Julie, when I'm looking to improve my French speaking skills, because it's just great talking with her, connecting with her, right? Which it's hard to do that. You can't really connect with a machine the same way that you can connect with a human. Not now, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, robots not as human-like as well, they're getting there, but yeah.
So I need to practice my French speaking skills because reading and writing, it's fine. I'm a translator, so I do those things pretty much on a daily basis. But speaking, I just get caught up and tongue-tied. And it's like there's this block in my brain that is stopping it from coming into my mouth. And then when I'm done with the conversations, all this information comes flooding back, and I know exactly what I should have said in that context, right? But just speaking and talking with a human helps you to get over that hump.
Yeah, well, I was learning French at Université Laval, one of the biggest colleges in Quebec, and this is French speaking primarily. I was working with another student there, so she wanted to learn English and I wanted to learn French, and we just partnered up, and we get together every once in a while and speak half the time in French, half the time in English. It's just great to have that language partner.
Yeah, it's honestly, it makes a world of difference. And that system actually works online too, or it exists online already.
Really?
Yeah. there are two great platforms that matches you with a native speaker who wants to learn your language, right? So you can do this exchange through the app. The first one is called Tandem. So in general, you tend to find a little bit more serious language learners on there, and the possibilities are endless for what languages you can learn.
Oh, wow.
And the second one is called HelloTalk. And this one is more like a social media platform because it'll connect you to a lot of different people, but the users tend to be a little less invested. Sometimes you'll find somebody who really wants to learn a language like you do, and sometimes you'll find people that just kind of want to go on there and have fun and not really focus on learning language. So it depends on which one you want. And I actually tested HelloTalk maybe around 7 years ago for Russian. I was really interested in I was really interested in Russian culture, and one of my high school friends and I were like, hey, let's learn Russian. And so we're like, okay, let's do it.
That's a normal thing for high school students to want to do.
I hadn't really set up much of my like language habits yet, so it didn't really follow through like Spanish and French. But anyway, the language app has gotten a lot better since then. So both platforms actually have a video call option. So you can see somebody face to face. You can see their facial expressions, the way their mouth moves, and the way their lips form different words. So it's really good.
Yeah, so listeners, why don't you just try out both Tandem, HelloTalk, see what you think of them, the pros and cons of each ones, and see if you can get the best out of both worlds. And just a reminder, we're not sponsored by any company whatsoever. We're just throwing these out there for you so that you can use them based on what we advise our clients and what we've used ourselves. So just to make that clear.
Yeah, and it's great too because both of these have completely free options.
Oh, well, cool.
Yeah. However, little disclaimer, I found that for both of these, in order to get the most out of the exchange, it's best if you go in with a decent base of whatever language you want to learn, because the users aren't trained coaches, they're not teachers, and that's kind of what ended up happening to me. My Russian level was too low to really take advantage of the platform, but I could probably use it for French or Spanish now.
Oh yeah, that's a great advice. Really cool. All right, so go in there when it's a little bit more like intermediate level. Yeah. So you're able to at least have a conversation.
Exactly.
Okay, so there we talked about speaking, and the other side of that coin, of course, is listening. So what's been helpful to you, Erin, on your language journeys?
Honestly, podcasts, we talked about TV a lot last time, but podcasts are really, really helpful because
of course.
It's literally all listening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the popular language apps like Duolingo or Babbel, they actually have some pretty interesting podcasts for language learners, especially if you're a beginner. And so most of these podcasts can be found on their apps or on other podcast platforms. For example, last May, I actually found one that took you on an audio tour of Italy.
What?
It was very, very cool.
In Italian?
In Italian,
oh
yes.
My word. With the food, do they give you spaghetti as you go from place to place?
I wish they could pass food through the phone.
Through the audio?
But yeah, basically the English-speaking host invited different Italian-speaking guests to talk about their hometowns and talk about different activities that you can do in those places. So it was really cool. They had little sound bites of like water in the background or like people talking based on the tour that you were going through, right?
So it really felt like you were there.
It really did. They did a really good job. And because it's like half English, half Italian. Yeah, where you listen to everything in Italian. You're doing a lot of listening, and then the English host will kind of summarize the important parts to make sure that you're catching things as you go along. So
what was
really,
that one
really
called? Do you remember?
Oh, it's a Babbel. It's a Babbel podcast. So if you look up Babbel Italian, it should pop up. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And then I found another one that was for Spanish, and it was a choose your own adventure mystery. Yes.
I love them.
So cool. Yes, because as a listener, you get to hear the suspects' interviews, and based on what they say, you get to decide who you want to talk to next, and who the perpetrator is, the culprit is.
Oh my word. So it's like a murder mystery?
Yes. Well, it's not a murder. It's like geared towards all ages. So there was like a robbery that happened, and you're trying to figure out. And it was like on a train, and it's really cool. But
you get to be an investigator. That is really cool. Oh, I'm gonna learn Spanish now just so that I can listen to this. A Spanish choose your own adventure, and like it tells you which episode to go to for your choice, depending on what you want to do next.
Exactly. So at the end, your English-speaking guide, who's another detective, will ask you, if you want to talk to Mr. So-and-so, go to episode 6. If you want to talk to Ms. blah, 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 go to episode 2. You know, that kind of thing.
Oh, my word. How creative to come up with a choose your own adventure podcast language learning. It's so unique. Oh, it sounds very cool.
Very creative, very unique. And honestly, Babbel and Duolingo have podcasts for a bunch of different languages. So if you want that creativity too, there's English, there's French, there's Russian, all sorts of stuff that they have on there. So
that's cool. And like I know that you really like investigations. Like I love investigations. So like I can see where that Spanish one really like got to you. Like I'm an investigator. I'm gonna solve this robbery, this crime, and I'm gonna figure out who did it. These whodunits, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So me too. Like that just goes right into our Venn diagram of like us like meeting there on the murder investigation or crime investigation.
Yes.
And for me, like my go-to for crime is Dateline. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts. Like so when we were first talking about doing a podcast, I'm like, yes, because like I live in this world of podcasts. I love it. So every time a Dateline comes out, I'm listening right away because it's quality reporting, quality producing.
Yeah.
It's just well done, and you always find out who did it.
Okay,
like, it's not about the murder, it's about the investigation and finding the murderer. I love it. Another one I really like is My Favorite Murder. It actually comes out twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays, so like I get a lot of content. I was listening to one today actually, because on Mondays it's the more formal podcast. So they start with a lot of banner. You can just hear English used in a natural way of talking back and forth. Very authentic. And then in the second half, they tell stories about this murder investigation.
Okay.
It could also be about other things because they've kind of, sometimes they go in a different direction.
Okay.
But overall, it's murder investigations. And the storytelling is just so good. And what they do is like one host will go first and she'll tell the story, but the other host is only hearing about it for the first time.
Okay.
So you can hear her natural reactions, her natural like, oh wow, that's cool. Oh my word, really? Like you can hear her like reacting, and then they switch, and then the other host tells her story, and again, like it's a total surprise to the other host what they're going to be covering that day.
Okay.
So you really get like natural reactions in. So it's very like maybe higher level English, more advanced level, because it's not scripted. It's very off the cuff, and it's very comedic. It's so funny. It's really, really funny.
And I remember you were telling me about another podcast that's more business focused too.
Yeah, like sometimes when my clients ask me for something in particular, like recently one of my clients asked me about leadership, like a podcast about leadership, because she's a business coach. So I recommended the ones by Brené Brown. She has 2, Unlocking Us and Dare to Lead. And Brené Brown is a sociologist who does a lot of research, but is really good at making it easy to understand. So it's science-based, but also very heart-based and vulnerability-based. So I just love it, and my client has been adoring it. So like every week, like she'll listen to a few episodes, and then we'll talk about it together in our time together. So that's really great to be able to suggest something to our clients that we know that they're gonna like. That's gonna be beneficial.
And I love that, because then you're able to talk more and discuss and really analyze what you're listening to, not just listening to it. Yeah.
And learn something that you can, instead of just the skill of language learning, you're also learning a skill you can apply to your everyday life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like two in one kind of a thing.
Two birds, one stone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Two birds, one stone. Another expression for you listeners.
So those are all great for oral communication, but let's talk about the written side of things.
Yeah.
Because like I mentioned in the last episode, reading is crucial when it comes to picking up new vocabulary and understanding how a language works. Yeah. And so I wanted to recommend this series that I found recently. It's called the Ollie Richards Short Story Series. And these books are extremely helpful because there's so many different languages: German, Korean, Russian, English, Spanish, French, whatever. I've used the French and the Spanish ones. And each book is a collection of stories. So I know I've mentioned before, I love stories. It's great. They're short. They've got twists. They've got turns, you know. And they're divided into short chapters for easy reading. So you can go through the skim, scan, and understand that we talked about before. And they even have comprehension questions and bolded keywords to help you highlight which words you should be looking up and researching.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Yeah. I know that another of our coaches, Nikki, really likes the Ollie Richards short stories as well. Okay. And in English, we also have the Penguin Readers and Pearson Readers. These are made for people learning English. So they take a book that's well known. It might be a classic or something that just came out, a bestseller, and it boils it down to the essentials. So it takes the big one, it makes a shorter version that's easier to understand. And there's 6 different levels. So from beginners to advanced, you can find the level that fits you and where you're at in your language journey. They even have some based on movies. Like recently they did a whole series on the Avengers movies that just came out.
Oh wow, that's fun. I'll have to use that with one of my clients.
Oh yeah.
And don't worry, because if you guys don't consider yourselves readers, every time you open up a website, you're reading. So find a site that is in the language you want to learn and has an interesting topic or theme. And one site that I really like reading with clients is Inc.com. Because they have a lot of articles based on different business and technology trends, education trends sometimes as well. And the free version gives you a decent amount of articles per month.
Yeah, and Inc.com is great for more advanced learners because it's natural. But one I like for beginners and intermediates is the Voice of America Learning English site. They have current events and by topic articles, and they always have the audio. So you can also listen while you read, or listen and then come back later and read to see if you understood what you thought you did, to check your comprehension. So it's really well done, and it's in American English.
Cool.
Voice of America Learning English.
All right. So last but not least, let's look into writing.
Yeah, so writing, like, you know, we have a lot of AI tools. We have a lot at our disposal, like Google Translate and my favorite, DeepL. And what I tell my clients is don't just translate from your native language into the language you want to learn or you want to write in, because you're not learning anything. So what I recommend is first write in your second language, the one that you're working on, okay? Write it in there, hit translate, and get it back into your native language, and see if the idea comes across like you want it to. Does it say what you want to say? And if not, tweak it. Tweak it until it comes out right. That's my the way I use DeepL, and I guess you use DeepL too sometimes there.
Yeah, DeepL is a great tool, honestly. But again, it's a tool, right? It's like a first step in the process, not necessarily the final product.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
And even with ChatGPT nowadays, it's really cool because not only will it correct you, you can ask it to explain why it's the correct way to do it. So don't just stop at finding the right answer. Find out the reason why it's the right answer. That's how you're going to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Because as language learners, we want to make sure that these tools don't become crutches for us. We want to use them as learning tools, right? But they shouldn't stop us from learning, obviously. We want to continue. But if we rely on them too much, then it can stunt the learning process, right?
Yeah, even like subtitles, like we were talking about last time.
Yeah.
It's like AI, any tool can become a crutch if they're used too much to the point where we're not actually learning the language itself.
It's true, because honestly, the best feeling in the world is being able to communicate with somebody with using your own skills and your own knowledge to be able to do it. It's just so satisfying. Well, I guess that means it's the end of another episode.
Oh, how exciting!
Number 3.
Our third, you're right. It's our third. Another 20 minutes down. Nice and easy, like a spoonful of sugar. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And next week we'll be interviewing each other, right? So I'm a little scared. I'm a little scared of what you're going to be asking me, huh?
Yeah, you ready to spill your innermost secrets?
No, I'm not ready for that. Are you? It goes both ways.
I guess we'll see. Just before we close, don't forget, did you hear the 3 expressions that we talked about? Get the best of both worlds. Get the best of both worlds. We said it better earlier.
Hard one to do.
The other side of the coin, and boiled down to the essentials. So write them down, write down the meetings, and again, we'll give them to you at the end of the season.
Yeah, and I also noticed that we used other words during our episode today, like stay on track, tweak. I just used that one. Be sure to write them down too. You can write other words down as you go along. And the list of these words is also in the show description.
Exactly. But sadly, Sarah, it's time to say goodbye.
Oh, do we have to?
We do.
Okay, then. I guess so. Goodbye, adios, au revoir from Quebec City.
And signing off from Montreal, do svidania. Hi everyone! I know we mentioned a lot of resources today, but don't worry, we have free PDFs on our resources page that list out all our tips and tricks. The link is in the show notes below. Happy learning!